like and subscribe to the Steiner Wars channel. I'm just going to look up missing people around the world. Around the world when they go camping in such mysterious ways. Let's have a look, guys, see what comes up. Oh, let's stop this one, shall we?
These are the most haunting vanishings that still baffle the world. In 2014, Lars Mittank disappeared from Varna Airport in Bulgaria. After acting strangely, he ran into the woods and was never seen again. His case remains a baffling mystery. In 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished while on vacation in Portugal. Despite global investigations, no trace of her has ever been found. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson called his parents after his car got stuck. Moments later, the call abruptly ended. He was never seen again. In 2013, Geraldine Larguet disappeared on the Appalachian Trail. Her remains were found 2 years later, but what happened remains unclear. These are the
most famous and disturbing case is the disappearance of Geraldine Larguet, who got lost off of the Appalachian Trail and left eerie journal entries before her death. She was found 2 years later, but to this day, no one knows what exactly happened to her. So what really goes on in the Appalachian Mountains? For the longest time, it's been considered one of the poorest regions in America. The decline of the coal industry in the towns has led to widespread unemployment, abandoned buildings, and increased drug addiction. However, it's more than just drugs and coal. The region has a rich history that spans centuries. The people in Appalachia are known for their tight-knit community, their kindness, and their willingness to help others. Whether you believe in the legends or not, the Appalachian Mountains are undeniably a place of beauty and mystery. Would you visit the Appalachian Mountains?
Mace is giving you guys a
Right. Okay, let's have this one, guys.
In 1991, a 12-year-old boy named Jared Negretti went hiking on a camping trip with his Boy Scout troop that consisted of 14 other boys. They were hiking towards the summit of Mount San Gorgonio in the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern California. Jared was on the shorter and heavier side. Around 6 p.m., 1,000 feet away from the summit, another group of hikers spotted Jared straggling behind and notified the scoutmaster at the summit. They said he was seen shortcutting the switchbacks on his way down the trail and was told not to and to stay on the trail by the other hikers. The scoutmaster, who was an experienced hiker, said he would pick up Jared on the way down. When he finally was able to descend the mountain to pick up Jared, he was nowhere to be seen. As soon as the scoutmaster realized that Jared had disappeared, he took the other scouts in his troop back to base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. Sheriff's deputies, along with search and rescue teams, began searching a 130 square mile area of the San Gorgonio wilderness, a very rocky, tree-lined terrain. Within 3 days, their search was focused on a 6 square mile area where a footprint believed to match one of Jared's high-top tennis shoes was found. Searchers also discovered beef jerky and candy wrappers believed to have been dropped by Jared, and perhaps most importantly, his camera was found. On the film roll were 12 pictures. Most were landscapes taken by the boy when he was still with the troop, but the last one shows a self-portrait, in which it seems he pointed the camera at his face, aided with the flash of the camera. It's possible he lost the camera when he slid down a portion of the mountainside. At least 70 officers, including some airlifted by helicopter and some on horseback, were deployed. Some of the helicopters were even equipped with infrared scanning. Over the next 2 weeks, as many as 3,000 people had logged 45,000 hours searching 50 square miles of the San Bernardino National Forest. So the question is, did he fall off the trail and slip down the mountainslide? While it's possible, it seems unlikely that his body wouldn't have been found in the immediate area around the switchbacks he was cutting down. Some people think he may have been the victim of a bear attack, but this seems unlikely as well, as there were no signs of blood, drag marks, or other evidence linked to any animal attack. Some believe he was abducted by a predator, given the mountain is well used by hikers. To this day, 3 decades later, Jared's remains have never been found. On the cold night of February 24th, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba County, California, Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, headed to California State University to attend a basketball game. When the group of men didn't return the next day, friends and family grew concerned. What should have been a quick road trip to see a basketball game turned into a mystery that has never been solved. All 5 men suffered their own mild forms of mental issues, but they were still able to fully function in society. The men were scheduled to play in a Special Olympics basketball game of their own the next day, for which they prepared their clothes before leaving for California State University the day prior. A police search ensued shortly after they were reported missing, and a few days later, the men's car was found abandoned far from the route they should have taken to return to Yuba City. In fact, it was a whole hour in the wrong direction of Yuba City, having been driven up a winding mountain pass in the Plumas National Forest at the northern point of the Sierra Nevada. The car had a few empty food wrappers and drink bottles. Apart from that, the car was empty. The car was found in working condition. It was lodged in a snowbank with no signs of foul play. However, the car could have been easily pushed out by the 5 young men, raising more questions. For the next week or so, police and forest rangers searched the area hoping for any signs of them, but unfortunately any possible tracks of the men, or even God forbid their bodies, were covered by a passing snowstorm. Multiple sightings of the 5 young men were reported, but none led to their discovery. First, a man named Joseph Scones called police, saying he saw the group of men on the Friday they disappeared, while he was trying to push his stuck car out of the snow. Joseph suffered a mild heart attack while trying to push his car out, and when he saw flashlight beams outside his car and a small group of men, he tried to call and ask the men for help, but they suddenly disappeared as if they ignored him. A second witness said she saw 5 men in a red pickup truck on Saturday and Sunday, an hour from where the car was abandoned. She told police that 2 of the men came into her store to buy food and used the phone while the rest stayed in the truck. Their disappearances continued to baffle everybody, even more so when the snow melted months later, in June of that same year, because more questions arose. A local man noticed a broken window on a Forest Service trailer, and when police inspected it, they found the dead body of Ted Weir inside. He appeared to have died from starvation, despite having food readily available nearby in the trailer. He was wrapped in many layers of blankets, and his feet were badly frostbitten. But what makes no sense is the fireplace, which could have been easily set up and could have kept him warm, was completely untouched, and on top of that, warm snow clothes that were found in the trailer were unused by Ted. It's possible he lived up to 13 weeks after the initial disappearance. 20 miles away from where the car had been abandoned, the bones of Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, and Jack Madruga were found not far from Ted's emaciated body, spread out from each other. They had died of hypothermia. Strangely, Gary was never found. Only his shoes were discovered in the nearby woods. To this day, no one can figure out why the group had gone in the direction they did, or why they left their perfectly functioning car, which the 5 men could have easily pushed out from the snow, only to separate from each other and eventually starve or freeze to death. On top of this, all of their families agreed that it was uncharacteristic of them to not help John Scones push his car out from the snow when he called out for help, and why Ted didn't even attempt to start a fire or the trailer's heating system, or eat the food found in the trailer, still makes no sense at all. Craig Freer of Scotia, New York, was 17 when he was last seen in June of 2004. He was a popular kid, with dimples, red hair, and a welcoming smile as he was described by friends and family. He was a star soccer player at the Scotia Glenville High School and about to be named captain of his team. Craig also picked up a part-time job, and his future was looking bright. There were a few colleges interested in offering Craig a scholarship for his athletic abilities, and one could say the world was truly his oyster. But that all changed on June 27th, 2004. On that day, he walked into the woods and was never seen again. So rewinding a bit, when Craig picked up his job at the Price Chopper Supermarket in Glenville, New York, his parents were proud that he'd be fitting working in with his busy schedule. On the dreaded day of Craig's disappearance, he He was seen by his parents walking out of his home for what would be the last time. His parents were under the impression he was going to work. His mother, Veronica, had even seen him carrying his uniform with him to his car. But when she went to go shopping at the supermarket later where Craig worked, just a few hours after he left home for his shift, she was confused when there was no trace of him. Veronica learned that Craig had actually lost his job at the supermarket after 2 months of employment and had been hiding it from his parents. He had been pretending to work there for weeks after his termination, so that his parents wouldn't know he was no longer employed. It's unknown why he was fired though, likely for not showing up.
Very, very strange, guys.
Very upset with their son, Craig's parents called his girlfriend since he left his phone behind. They did not yet know that she was his ex-girlfriend. They called her to see if they knew where he was, and at first she said she had no idea, but after a second call, out of guilt, she admitted that he was with her. Veronica lectured Craig over the phone, telling him that he needed to come home right away and that they needed to talk to him. Little did they know he was visiting her because he was upset about their recent breakup. Craig said goodbye to his ex-girlfriend and left her apartment located in Scotia as well. And according to his ex-girlfriend, she watched as he walked towards his car, but then stood still for a moment, then darted off in the opposite direction, as if something had scared him and he was running away from imminent danger. However, if that were the case, it would have made more sense to drive away. Before this, he told his mother he would be home in 10 minutes over the phone, the time it would take to drive from his ex-girlfriend's to home. Around the time that call ended, Craig's dad arrived at the complex and saw his son's car was still parked outside. By 5 p.m. that day, Veronica had reported her son missing, and at first police weren't too interested, assuming it was just a normal kid running away for the day because of an argument with parents. But as hours turned into days, and when the investigators found out that he didn't have his phone or wallet with him at the time of his disappearance, they agreed something was wrong and began to further investigate. Police hit a big lead when a few teenagers came forward to tell police that they had seen Craig or someone matching his description walking along the railroad tracks behind his ex-girlfriend's apartment complex, and shortly after, he was seen entering the woods. They claimed that when they tried to call to him, he motioned for them to be quiet with his finger to his lips, and then just kept on walking, disappearing into the woods. Investigators started searching up and down the railway line with no luck. Police dogs were used while searching the woods, even checking the nearby Mohawk River, but all these searches turned up nothing, as if Craig had just vanished into thin air. Of course, after 2 decades, police investigations have largely scaled back, but in 2021, a new lead was discovered. One of Craig's co-workers at the Price Chopper supermarket told investigators that sometime between June 27th and June 2nd, 2004, he saw Craig in the passenger seat of a car traveling north on Route 50 in Glenville.
That's not right.
According to the witness, the car stopped at the traffic lights on Sheffield Road before turning left and disappearing up the intersecting road. Craig's family is still hoping that one day they'll learn the truth about what happened to their son. For a well-liked 17-year-old with such a bright future, no one can seem to understand how or why he just vanished into the woods. And lastly, here's one many of you may have heard before, but still remains one of the creepiest national park disappearances I've ever heard. In March of 2014, 2 Dutch young women, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, went to Panama for a vacation to reward themselves for graduating. To make it a little more upsetting, the 2 had taken on extra shifts the month prior in order to pay for it. Reaching Panama, they soon headed for the town of Bouquet, where they were hosted by a family. Shortly after, on April 1st, 2014, Chris and Lisanne vanished as they were hiking the trails in the forest around the town of Bouquet, which in of itself was strange because they were scheduled for a tour guide by the name of Feliciano to assist them on the trails for the following day. The 2 women made their way for the trails, accompanied by the host family's dog named Blue. When Blue arrived back home later that evening without the girls, the family became concerned and tried contacting the mother of Lisanne, who then proceeded to try to make contact with her daughter, but to no avail. On April 2nd, the following day, Feliciano was waiting for the girls to show up for their hike, but they never arrived.
La persona que por un evento que teníamos pendiente de hacer el día miércoles a las 8 de la mañana les fui a buscar, no las encontré y ya al darnos cuenta que no habían dormido en su casa donde habitualmente estaban con la familia, al día siguiente.
He went to the home of the host family the girls were staying at, but they weren't there as well. In fact, most of the women's belongings were still there prior to their disappearances. The women did have their cell phones, but they wouldn't answer any attempted calls. As panic began to set in with everyone, the police were contacted and an extensive search began, with the help of everyone from farmers and locals to detectives, search dogs, helicopters, and more. The search lasted for 10 days, yet no trace of Chris and Lisanne were found. 2 months had passed, and a local found a backpack belonging to one of the women. To everyone's shock and horror, skeletal remains were also discovered, and after DNA testing, they were shown to be matches for both women. The story doesn't end there, though. While continuing the investigation, their cell phone logs were released. The 2 women were trying to make 911 phone calls throughout the stretch of the 10 days, but they couldn't get service. Although believed to be a possible accident of getting lost and injured in the forest, which therefore resulted in succumbing to the elements, strange discoveries were made that brought that theory into question. Inside one of the backpacks, there was a camera with 100 photos stored on the memory, taken within those 10 days of their vanishing. Most of these photos were normal, scenic pictures documenting what was supposed to be the 2 young women's fun vacation. The police were also able to take the pictures that the women took and match them up with their phone calls to 911. Disturbingly, cell phone data shows that only 2 hours after this seemingly happy photo was taken, they attempted to call 911.
Looking for a day of relaxation? These spa center near you are the perfect solution for all massage services. Click below to see.
It starts to become stranger though. 10 out of the 100 pictures were taken within the 10 days. The other 90 were taken afterwards around 1 to 4 in the morning, in complete darkness. It may be that they were taken to get some form of vision at night through the flash, but it's not been confirmed. Some believe that it wasn't even the girls that took these pictures. In one photo of a close-up of the back of Chris's head, it seems to show a wound to the right side in the temple area, and blood on her hair. Lisanne may have been using the camera light to see how bad Chris's injury was. Some people believe Chris was actually deceased in this photo, and that their murderer was the one taking the photo. Disturbingly, there was a hiking shoe that still had a foot in it that belonged to Chris. Also found was a pelvic bone that belonged to Lisanne. As of right now, the accepted theory by police is that the 2 women went off the beaten path of the trail, and one of them was injured. Then the other woman was trying to provide help and became injured herself in the process, which then led to starvation and dehydration. But this is just a theory, and whether this is true, or if the 2 girls were targeted by someone out in the woods, will potentially forever remain unknown. But wait, what if the tour guide had something to do with it? A lot of people believe Feliciano had something to do with their deaths. In fact, multiple women have left reviews on the tour guide, warning women not to go into the woods alone with him, as he can become very touchy-flirty, even allegedly joking with one girl that he'd chop her leg off. On top of this, Feliciano was the one to find the shoe with a foot in it behind a specific tree trunk, almost as if he knew to look there. There are a lot more details that go into this theory, but that would remain a video for a different day. For now, whether the tour guide had any part in their disappearance may forever remain a mystery, just like the rest of this case.
On July 29, 2008,
Four friends went camping under the same stars in July 2017, deep near Yosemite National Park in California. By morning, only 3 of them woke up. One tent was empty. No screams, no struggle, just silence. Before we continue, please subscribe, like, and share. His name was Daniel Reeves, 34 years old, experienced, prepared, and familiar with the wilderness. On the second night, he stepped away from the campsite to gather firewood. He carried no backpack, no flashlight. He was only supposed to be gone for minutes. But Daniel never came back. Hours passed. Panic set in. When search teams arrived, they found his footprints leading toward a dry riverbed, then stopping abruptly, as if he had vanished mid-step. There were no signs of a fall, no blood, no body. Tracking dogs lost his scent. Helicopters scanned the forest and found nothing. The wilderness kept its secret. Daniel was never found. His disappearance led to stricter camping safety rules in the area and added his name to a growing list of unexplained wilderness vanishings. For his family, there was no closure, only unanswered questions. Some say the forest is peaceful. Others know it remembers everything it takes. Because if a man can disappear in seconds, how safe are any of us out there? Please subscribe and share.
Not saving the cities either, mate.
Did you know 9 expert hikers chose to freeze to death rather than stay in their tent? In February 1959, a group of experienced Soviet mountaineers set up camp in the Ural Mountains. They were seasoned professionals on what should...
Excuse me. Stop playing with my phone. Hey.
Did you know 9 expert hikers chose to freeze to death rather than stay in their tent? In February 1959, a group of experienced Soviet mountaineers set up camp in the Ural Mountains. They were seasoned professionals on what should have...
What's going on?
Me and my brother did this trend.
Did you?
Me and my brother did this trend.
I was just checking to see if I went viral.
Set up camp in the Ural Mountains. They were seasoned professionals on what should...
That's weird, it's just stopped in mid. Why?
Did you know 9 expert hikers died fleeing their tent barefoot into minus 30-degree weather, and no one knows why? In February 1959, Igor Dyatlov led 8 experienced climbers into the Ural Mountains for what should have been a routine winter expedition. These weren't beginners. They were seasoned Soviet mountaineers with years of harsh weather training. But on February 1st, something went terribly wrong. Rescue teams found their tent 3 weeks later, cut open from the inside with knives. Footprints in the snow showed they ran barefoot into the deadly cold, abandoning all their gear. The bodies were discovered over several months, scattered across the mountainside. What they found defied explanation. Crushed ribs with no external wounds, missing tongues and eyes, radiation on their clothes. The Soviet government immediately classified everything and banned access to the area for 3 years. The official cause of death? An unknown compelling force. 60 years later, dozens of theories exist, from military weapons testing to natural disasters. But the Dyatlov Pass incident remains officially
9 people ran into free.
We promise a tenfold
Have you heard this song before?
On May 8, 2020,
Are you all geared up for this making tax digital thing? I keep worrying I'm going to get something really obvious.
On May 8, 2021, a woman named Malie Perales was driving down the Packer Drive Northeast Road alongside the Rogue River in Belmont, Michigan. She and her 2 roommates were on their way back after a night out, and they were all in a cheerful mood. However, their smiles quickly vanished as they stumbled onto a horrifying scene. At around 2:30 a.m., while driving near the Rogue Hollow Court, one of the passengers spotted a strange figure lurking by the side of the road. This encounter was extremely terrifying, but it also sparked the group's curiosity, and after some deliberation, they decided to turn around, and this is what they then came across.
What the
What is that?
No,
Stop.
I'm not. I'm not. No. Hell no.
What the
Oh.
They were soaked.
They saw what looked like a young woman drenched from head to toe as if she had just crawled out of the nearby river. She also looked like she was crying, banging her head on the road and waving for help. Saw what looked like a young woman drenched from head to toe as if she had just crawled out of the nearby river. She also looked like she was crying, banging her head on the road and waving.
Wow, look at that, guys. What the heck? Why is she doing that?
For help. Malie posted the video of this encounter on TikTok and it instantly went viral, leading people to come up with all sorts of far-fetched theories about ghosts, spirits, etc. However, as wild as the theories got, Malie later posted several videos shutting them down and revealing what really happened. According to her, they kept circling back and driving past the disturbed woman several times after recording the first video to make sure she was okay. While none of them had the nerve to get out of the car and approach her, they did call the cops and waited nearby until help arrived. The woman was then taken to a nearby hospital where she was treated for cold exposure. As it turns out, she somehow fell into the Rogue River from the east side and swam across it onto the road.
Wow. Yep, she had to have come up out of the water. Yep, there's a dig spot there. So she came up from down there. That's had to have been why she was so wet. This was the spot that she had left. I don't know why or what was going on.
After regaining some composure, she also revealed that the woman was from Kalamazoo, a town that's over 60 miles from where she was found. However, she had no recollection of how she got to Belmont and fell in a river so far away from home. From what we know, she was most likely experiencing a severe mental break, where her memory gap was caused by a rare condition known as fugue state, something we covered in our previous video on the most disturbing mental disorders. For those who don't know, a fugue state is a rare condition where a person suddenly loses their memory and starts acting like someone else. They might wander off, travel long distances, or do things completely out of character without realizing anything is wrong. It's usually triggered by extreme stress or trauma, and once it's over, the person often has no memory of what happened. And while this condition is quite rare, all the signs suggest that's exactly what happened to this mysterious woman from Kalamazoo, especially since the authorities later found her car parked behind a random house just east of the river. She likely drove to that neighborhood on her own but had zero memory of doing so, which fits perfectly with the known symptoms of fugue state. Malie also shared her video in a local Facebook group, hoping to find more answers about what went down. Unfortunately, the responses she received weren't as helpful as she'd hoped, since most people in the neighborhood believe the screaming and noises were just the sounds of a wild animal, like a coyote. But there were a few responses that deepened the mystery. Like this one person who remembered meeting her earlier that same night, stating, "Saw this person between Van Dam and Packer Woods around 10:15 p.m. Friday. Asked her if she needed help, to which she responded no." Another person also mentioned hearing about a woman walking into his neighbor's house, yelling hello 3 times and then leaving on her own. And while this added further evidence supporting the fugue state theory, these responses still left a key question unanswered. Who was she? Malie tried to contact both the police and the hospital for answers, but despite her insistence, both the police officers and the hospital staff refused to reveal her real name. That said, we still have enough information to make an educated guess. Based on everything I could uncover, the mysterious woman in this unsettling video was most likely Mei Zhou. She was a 28-year-old Chinese woman who went missing from Kalamazoo on May 6, 2021. Before her disappearance, she told her friends that she felt like she was being followed by a stalker she met online. Unfortunately, these are the only details about her case that were made public. I couldn't find any clear answers on whether the stalker was real or if she was just overwhelmed by paranoia. In either case, the constant fear and stress of feeling watched likely drove her to slip into some variation of the fugue state we discussed earlier. Hopefully she received the mental help she desperately needed and is now in a better mental state than she once was. Tracking down a missing person can be an extremely daunting task, but tracking down a person's personal information often isn't. For example, just by knowing your name and the town or city you live in, I could probably find out your address, phone number, make and model of your car, who your relatives are, and much more. This is because data brokers collect all our information, package it, and sell it to whoever wants it. It can cost someone less than $1 to purchase this information about you. Most people buying this information aren't trying to find missing persons, they're probably scammers or stalkers. If you don't believe me, Google yourself right now and see what comes up. Thankfully, with my sponsor Aura, this type of thing can be prevented. They can identify data brokers who are selling my information without my permission and automatically submit opt-out requests on my behalf. You can keep an eye on your opt-out request progress in your Aura account while they work to remove your information. Give it a few weeks and you'll stop seeing your data on these sites when you search for yourself, helping to reduce spam. Aura can also continuously monitor the dark web and alert me if they find my personal information exposed. They let you know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access your credit or bank accounts. Plus,
Well, I remember that woman who went missing in that elevator in America somewhere. She went in that elevator and she got put in like this water tank. Oh man, that was like, oh my gee. Anyway, proceed.
they give up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. The Aura app also has a VPN with 100+ virtual locations. Does your current VPN have all these other features too? You can go to my link, aura.com/chillingscares to try 14 days for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed.
I could use any advanced features and tools on YouTube. I got thanked for it. I got the email still from the YouTube saying thanks to me, and oh wow, just to YouTube. I think you're brilliant. You saved my soul and my sanity, and I never thought I'd even get 1 subscriber. So thanks YouTube for giving me my channel. Thank you, and thank you again. I'm going wild camping and I cannot wait because I'm a paranormal investigator. And I can feel free. Yay. Right, what's going on?
On May 8th, 2021, a woman named Malik find and meet celebrities. He did his research online and saved up as much money as he could.
Oh, okay. Unsolved mystery. Let's see what this is, guys.
Sounds like Ojo time. Feel the fun with games picked for you based on what you like to play.
Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick-minded, beautiful freak. And today we are going to be looking at some interesting murders that have all...
Hold on. For a start, I don't think that was right what you said. And two, I don't. I think it's disgusting and outrageous and all other things that people do to other people. So I think you're dead wrong now and putting the thumbs down.
Occurred in the boundaries of the United States National Parks.
Mate, there's no... Honestly, I hate people who say that. I hate people like that, thank you. People who can go murdering people and stuff like that, it's just no need for it. Making them go missing. Nah. Let's rewind that, shall we, guys? It's thumbs down for me anyways. Let's just listen to that again, shall we?
Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick-minded, beautiful freak.
See what I mean? You see what I mean? I don't like none of that, and you're out of order, so you get thumbs down, love.
And today we are going to be looking at some interesting murders that have all occurred in the boundaries of the United States National Parks. Have you ever heard of Missing 411? Of course you have. You're here. I know most of you probably...
Actually, no, I've never heard of it, so I think you're wrong there, love. I've never heard about it, and I think you're saying the wrong things, love. I do. I've given you a thumbs down anyways, yeah? Because what you're saying is totally wrong. I've never heard about this. This is Dinah Ward's channel, Freaky Fridays, mate. And I'm sorry, and I'm dead sorry, but you should be calling people freaks, yeah? That I disagree with. 2, there's nothing funny about getting murdered or going missing. 3, I think you're out of order, love. Sort your head out.
We have. But for those of you who haven't, it is a series of books written by former police...
Right. Shall we do that again, guys?
And I know you do... Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick-minded, beautiful freak. And today we are going to be looking at some interesting murders that have all occurred in the boundaries of the United States National Parks. Have you ever heard of Missing 411? Of course you have.
You know, you should be careful what you say, because what happens if you end up missing one day? Think before you speak, love. Because you got a thumbs down from me, 100%.
You're here. I know most of you probably have, but for those of you who haven't, it is a series of books written by
You're
former
wrong.
police officer David Paulides, big fan by the way, about mysterious disappearances in the national parks. And the name Missing 411 comes from a list of 411 people missing from national parks, and it's also the number you can call to report a missing person requiring investigation. So in today's video, we are going to be covering some of the most intriguing disappearances related to the 411.
Excuse me, there's nothing intriguing about people going missing.
And our first one is called Bigfoot Steals Children in the Woods. This is a story about Dennis Lloyd Martin and Trenny Lynn Gibson. And we begin our search for the missing in Appalachia. Yes, I say Appalachia because my boyfriend is from Appalachia and they say Appalachia, not Appalachian. Don't come at me. Specifically in the Smoky Mountains National Park, nestled between Tennessee and North Carolina. Smoky Mountain National Park might be one of the most beautiful places to visit in the continental United States.
Don't matter how good this research is, right? But I'm sorry, but you're not right in the head, love.
It boasts gorgeous mountain ranges, dense forests, flowing waterfalls, and miles of hiking trails, including the Appalachian Trail, or Appalachian, whatever you want to say. This means that millions of people visit every year, and while most get to enjoy the park, some may never leave. And our first case occurred on June 14th, 1969, at Spence Field. The Martin family had spent the night on the 13th at a cabin within the park. Dennis Martin, along with his father, William Martin, his brother Douglas, and his grandfather Clyde, had decided to go for a hike and ended up going to Spencer Field. And this field is high up on the mountain with plenty of tall grass growing all around it and very thick vegetation surrounding the area. It also crosses the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. So William and Clyde would sit down and allow the kids to play around once they reached their destination. And while they were resting, another family would come by, which coincidentally they would have the same last name as the Martins, Martin. And they would come up and ask if their kids could play together, and of course William and Clyde obliged. And over the next few minutes, the family's children would play in that tall grass and everything would be fine. But that was when one of the kids suggested that they played hide and seek. Don't play hide and seek in the forest in the woods.
Yeah, you got a good point on that. Always stick with your kids and, if they go playing, then stick with them. You don't just, you just don't let the kids go and run off in the forest. You let them go with you. There we go, guys.
Woods in Appalachia, don't do it. So when the game began, all the children would sprint off into different directions, including Dennis Martin. And he was seen about 50 feet from his dad on the edge of the field on the Tennessee side. So roughly 5 minutes would go by and all the children would eventually come out except for Dennis. And his father would naturally become immediately concerned. When he saw Douglas's face, he knew something was wrong. So everyone in the field obviously began to search the immediate area, screaming his name and looking behind every tree and bush. But Dennis was nowhere to be found. And at the time of his disappearance, Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt. He was roughly 4 feet tall and weighed about 55 pounds. He is also described as having brown hair and brown eyes. So the authorities were naturally called and an extensive search began. But as the search continued, they would find no trace of Dennis. The park rangers began by asking people in the immediate area if they saw Dennis or saw anything that was suspicious, but everyone would reply that they had not seen the boy. And around 5 p.m. on July 14th, only a few miles away from where Dennis went missing, the Key family would begin a hike near.
You wouldn't have been so bad, like, if you had just said that. I don't know.
Rowan's Creek in Cades Cove. While on their hike, they heard.
You, lady, just need to be careful what you say and how you say it, because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, or you can go missing under yourself.
Heard, quote unquote, an enormous, sickening scream. And they would walk a few hundred yards in the direction of the scream to see if something was wrong and if they could help.
A man and his children, and they were.
This is Emma, and this is her immune system. Her bodyguard, who protects.
they were trying to photo the deer. They were following the deer up Rowan's Creek, and they heard a child scream. The father ran up there, and he saw a man dart into the woods, and he described him as unkempt.
And Mr. Key would go on to investigate the scream by himself, just in case it was like a dangerous situation for his family. But when he reached the area where he thought the scream had come from, he would see a man in the bushes who darted off into the woods. So he quickly turned and left the area, thinking that that was extremely weird, and then he would learn only a few hours later that a boy had gone missing in that area hours before he saw the man in the bushes. While this is incredibly strange, it will be incredibly important later. Mr. Keyes would even go on to state, "But it wasn't a bear, it was a man hiding in the bushes. He was definitely trying to hide from us." Which sounds suspicious as f. So the search for Dennis would move on well into the night, but be hindered by a very large rainstorm, causing the search to stop for a night. And in the morning, an extensive search party was...
You lady need to just be careful how you introduce the channel at first, mate, saying that it's not good.
planned to begin operating the next day. And when June 15th came, one of the largest manhunts for a missing person ever seen would form in hopes of finding Dennis. In total, there were 30 Boy Scouts, 51 Ranger students, and 3 helicopters, including 2 helicopters sent from the US Air Force. On top of all that too, there was a group of Green Berets that arrived from Fort Benning, and later that week, 40 more Green Berets would be on the case. It's completely wild that the case ramped up to this degree in less than 24 hours. So over the course of the next few days, the search would grow immensely, like I said, gaining hundreds of volunteers a day until the Park Service had to literally tell people to stop showing up. Talk about people coming together though, that's awesome. At its peak though, there were 1,400 searchers helping to try to find Dennis. Even the FBI and the Coast Guard were called in to help with the search. But one thing that was odd was that in the official National Park Service report, the reason that the FBI was called was not directly stated, because foul play had not been suspected yet, so there was no need for them really to be involved in this investigation unless the FBI and NPS knew something William Martin didn't. But the FBI would later conclude that Dennis was not abducted, despite his father's adamantly telling him that he believed, without a doubt, that foul play was suspected. But
right, the police here and in America and everywhere, the police are crap. They don't do the jobs properly. All they do is sit on the backside waiting for cars to go by that are speeding. That's all they're bothered about. They're not bothered about us people. And they never will be. Like and subscribe, but you need to be careful how you introduction on your channel look, because seriously, you got thumbs down at the beginning. I'm not going to put it up because yeah, I think it's out of order when people go missing. The poor things, nah, there's no need for that introduction.
despite the NPS and FBI suspecting that foul play did not occur, they would conduct numerous interviews with people in the surrounding area, including Harold Key. What's even more strange is Harold's interview and the circumstances surrounding it. According to the FBI, when they reached out to Harold, he agreed to meet with investigators at the park. But when the time for the interview arrived, he never showed up to the park. Instead, the FBI's would run into him outside the park and continue the interview there. And during this interview, Harold once again claimed that he had no idea of the boy's recent disappearance, but called the authorities anyway because of the strange man and the scream he and his family had heard. Furthermore, Harold's son would later tell newspapers that he had seen a bear or someone running through the trees in the same area where his father saw the man in the bush. But despite all the evidence that was presented to the NPS and the FBI, they concluded that Harold's sighting and Dennis's disappearance was in no way connected. So much so that they didn't even bother to investigate the area where Harold had that sighting, which is so stupid. NSP Ranger Dwight McCarthy.
I actually agree with you on that. That is so stupid. You're right about that, love. You see, you just need to be careful how your introduction and stuff. Yeah.
Who was well respected, and
I'm allowed to use the advanced tools on YouTube, etc. Oh yeah.
NSP's best searcher at Great Smoky National Park, stated that it was possible for a man to carry a small child from where Dennis was located to where Harold spotted the man in the bushes, which is extremely prevalent. Even other people within the NSP, such as Harold Sherman, a research associate of the Experienced Services Program, a branch for older NSP employees, wrote literal letters to his superiors and news outlets of his beliefs that Dennis was, in fact, abducted, stating, "I am impelled to ask you if you know whether or not there have been or are any questionable characters in this region, camping out in the wild in this area, like hermits, squatters. Such an individual may not be connected with the boy's disappearance at all, but I feel that a maniac, so-called, does exist in the vicinity and could have trailed the body. I hesitate to write anymore as my conscious mind is trying to reject such a feeling. I see something red and something being carried or dragged. Are there any caves in the vicinity? A stream may even run through it or part of it. I am always tormented when impressions come to my conscious mind trying to tell me that they couldn't possibly be true. But I get a feeling of sudden panic on the part of Dennis. What happened to him occurred suddenly, unexpectedly, and he could not or did not cry out. He seems to be struck down by something. The area is rugged." I don't know why I gave him that accent. What happened to him occurred suddenly, unexpectedly, and he could not or did not cry out. He seems to be struck down by something. The area is rugged. I don't know why I gave him that accent, but I feel like it's right. It's right, and I agree with him. I agree with him. Go look! I don't know why I turned into Jerry Seinfeld. Also, I'm sorry, I gotta put on my glasses. I can't see. Chris reads screens or whatever.
That's not one with glasses, but I should wear them, but I haven't got any yet. Oh, I haven't got my own braces. Stay properly, so yeah, and I need my UC letters from my mum's, which I will get.
Because now is Chris Reed's Screen.
And things continued to be weird, to say the least, as the searches concluded, and the case would unfortunately go cold. First, both the NPS and the FBI kept Dennis's father, William, in the dark about Harold Keyes' sightings. It also seems like they kept the general public in the dark about this as well. William didn't actually learn until the Key family sightings, until the NPS went public, which is up. They also didn't inform him of the FBI interview that took place after they told him his son's disappearances had no foul play involved. Furthermore, many people have requested an FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information Act, request on the Dennis case from the FBI. And this request has conveniently been rejected, including David Paulides. Shout out, you're awesome. What's even more odd is that despite publicly stating the sighting, the NPS never created an official report about it. So the only way to know about it is through the newspapers. There were also numerous psychics called to cover the case, and some were even saying that he was alive and to check the trees for the body. But what's next might be the most damning information of it all. In 2011, David Paulides drove to interview William Martin and Dwight McCarter to see if they had any unreleased information on the case. And from William's interview, we learned this. When Dennis disappeared, he was literally within 50 feet or less of William. His brother Douglas also never saw anything strange in the woods. William and an NPS fire prevention officer hiked from the Spence Field to the area where Harold saw the man in the bushes in 90 minutes flat, confirming that someone could have carried Dennis down the path. They also saw no caves and no evidence of anybody living there. Mr. Martin actually spoke with Harold and learned that he and his family saw a man carrying somebody over their shoulder along a nearby ridge at the time of Dennis's disappearance. What? And he also learned that the local newspaper purposely omitted and changed this information to say that they saw a bear. Mr. Martin would state that the head of the Park Services was merely just a figurehead and receiving orders from someone else, explaining why so much information was neglected and hidden. Furthermore, the lead FBI agent, Jim Reich, on the case took his own life only 4 years after Dennis's disappearance. Lastly, William firmly believes that his son was kidnapped by somebody waiting in the woods. He stated, "There was no way his son could have gotten away as fast as he did without people finding him." And based on this interview, it became extremely clear that the FBI and NPS were working closer together than people had thought. They both withheld information, and the people assigned to each case by the agency had odd events or information surrounding them. Like, to not tell the family of a missing child that a man was seen carrying someone over their shoulder is extremely odd, to say the least. It was almost as if they knew that Harold Key had seen something he shouldn't have, and that they wanted to investigate it privately or something. I love conspiracies, but it's just, I can't even imagine, as the family of Dennis, just not having any answers and knowing that you have been kept in the dark. Like, how could you not think of the most f***ed up things, you know?
You know what? I'm going to give you a thumbs up, but at the beginning I didn't like it, okay? But I'll give you a thumbs up, because what you're saying is true, so I'll let that slide. But when you're introducing yourself, don't go calling us freaks, because I'm not. I hate murderers. I hate psychos. And I was in an abusive relationship for 7 years.
And that theory would be further backed up by Dwight's interview, and here's what we learned about that. Dennis still believed that a man could have easily carried Dennis away from Spencefield and through Rowan's Creek with ease, and when asked about why the FBI and NPS were downplaying Mr. Key's sightings, Dwight states that the FBI wouldn't have any knowledge of the woods, so dismissing the idea that a man could have trekked from Spencefield up to Rowan's Creek is not that crazy. The NPS, however, Dwight reaffirms that he has walked that area numerous times and knows for a fact that it is 100% possible. And Dwight stated that it was odd to have the Green Berets come and set up and enter the woods armed. In the 1970s, even NPS Rangers were not armed.
Sorry, guys,
and previous instances when the National Guard got involved, they were used
10 seconds.
and set up and numerous times and knows for a fact that it is downplaying Mr. Key's sightings. Dwight states that the FBI wouldn't have any knowledge of the woods, so dismissing the idea that a man could have trekked from Spencefield up to Rowan's Creek is not that crazy. The NPS, however, Dwight reaffirms that he has walked that area numerous times and knows for a fact that it is 100% possible. And Dwight stated that it was odd to have the Green Berets come and set up and enter the woods armed. In the 1970s, even NPS Rangers were not armed. And previous instances when the National Guard got involved, they were usually unarmed as well. Additionally, in the case of Dennis Martin, the Green Berets didn't even interact with the NPS.
Okay, once you get going, you're quite knowledgeable. You should be careful at the beginning of your introduction, love.
Rangers. And Mr. McCarter confirms that there were wild men who live within the park, which is terrifying, and that they purposefully did so to avoid human contact. So when Mr. Keyes saw a man in the bush, it was technically possible for him to see a wild man just hiding in the bushes. He also stated, though, that he didn't believe that a wild man would have taken Dennis, as the only wild man that he knew of resided on the opposite side of the park from where Dennis disappeared. So the disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin is one of the most puzzling disappearances to ever occur. Like, how could a little boy avoid over 1,400 searchers, highly trained Green Berets, and experienced park rangers who know every nook and cranny of the park? Additionally, it seems like the military, FBI, and NPS knew something that everyone else didn't. What's new, though? And it's not crazy to believe that the FBI would get involved, as foul play would have to be ruled out. But why would they purposely dismiss Keyes' sightings? And why would the newspaper alter what Keyes' family saw? Also, why did the Green Berets go into the woods armed? Maybe they were tracking some killer in the area, and when Dennis went missing, they pulled all of their efforts into scrubbing the area. It would also explain why there was such...
That is more like it. That is exactly more like it. Go, girl. Just be careful how you introduce yourself and about others.
A significant response from military branches and investigative agencies. Or maybe they knew something was in Trenny Lynn. were scared to encounter it. But let's look at similar disappearances that have occurred in the same area. Our next story details the disappearance of Trenny Lynn Gibson. So on October 8th, 1976, in Great Smoky National Park, only 6 years after Dennis Martin's disappearance, Trenny Lynn Gibson vanished from hiking on a trail. On the 8th, 16-year-old Trenny was hiking to Clingman's Dome. With her high school class, starting from Andrews Bald on the North Carolina side. She hiked with Robert Simpson and a group to Andrews Bald, but then turned around to walk back to the bus. And at 3 p.m., about 3/4 of a mile from their final destination, Trenny would vanish. And in the area of her disappearance, the trail was marked and she was in full view of other hikers. And following her disappearance, the NPS began a search for the missing girl and started doing interviews of the students to see if they had any information to offer. It is safe to say that what occurred before Trenny's disappearance was odd, to say the least. In multiple interviews, Trenny was last seen on the trail bending over, looking at something, and turning right off the trail right before vanishing. Furthermore, a fellow student, Anita Rounds, claimed that she had vanished from the trail.
Do you know what I'd like to know? What does the government actually know? What we don't know about the extraterrestrials and all that lot, because I'm into that as well, which I'm going to be looking that up pretty soon. I'll call it the UFO science of mysterious outgoings and incomings. That's what I'll call it.
Completely. And it's important to note that the
But I would not repeat.
surrounding area was miles and miles of thick vegetation and forest. And next to the trail was a small stream and a slight rocky slope. Anita Bounds would say in an interview,
"She was on the trail when I last saw her. I looked away, and when I looked back, Trenny was nowhere in sight. I should have been able to see her if she went up the trail. I checked the area where Trenny was last seen. No trail leading off. Very rough, small stream, brush and trees. Yelled, but no answer."
and the search would begin on the 8th, but was hindered by weather, which is very strange because that happened to Dennis as well. Not that that's all, but it's very weird. It's very convenient weather.
It is weird and very suspicious indeed. Now, you're right about that, love. I think at the beginning of your introduction and introducing yourself, you should be a bit more careful what you're calling people, yeah? Maybe not say that again, you all right? Like, I introduced myself as, "Hi, I'm Diana War." I don't call anybody what you did. That was just, I hate psychopaths, I hate murderers, and I feel sorry for the people that go missing.
And following the day that Trenny disappeared, the NPS really didn't do much to aid in the search. We already hate him at this point. It became such a problem that a Swain County Civil Air Patrol commander, John Maddox, had to call the NPS and complain about how he had people on standby and couldn't move forward unless they gave him the okay. And unfortunately, the NPS, would you know it, wouldn't respond to Maddox and his crew of over 40 searchers, 2 doctors, 14 pilots, and 5 planes all waiting to help search for Trenny had to be completely called off. And the search for Trenny lasted from the 8th of October through to the 22nd, during which time 300 volunteer searchers just combed the hills of the Smoky Mountains. The Army and U.S. Marine Corps, along with helicopters and tracker dogs, all got involved, and they produced some evidence. Search dogs had found her scent at Andrews Bald and headed toward the Forney Creek Trail. Furthermore, investigators would find shoe prints matching in size and style of the shoes that she wore on that day she disappeared. And they would find those footprints at Double Springs Shelter, which is about 4.5 miles away from Andrews Bald by the trail and about a 2-hour hike away. And even more strange, according to some sources, search dogs found her scent at Clingman's Dome and then Collins Gap, which was in the opposite direction of where she was last seen and far east of Double Springs Shelter. And the FBI would briefly get involved, but like Dennis's case, they aligned with the opinion of the NPS, and said that there was no suspected foul play. And a psychic would eventually be brought into this investigation as well, and would say that they saw, quote unquote,
Trenny sitting in a hollow in what might be a bear den or something. Rocky area. Not a lot of undergrowth. Several very large trees, lots of acorns on the ground.
I don't know if that's what they sound like. I don't have a name or anything to go off of, but that's what I picture, you know. And in April, her father would ask for another search by the NPS, but was told that only 25 people would be allowed to conduct a small survey of the area, meaning that the final search for his daughter would be small and non-intensive.
Bloody massive.
NPS. So how was it possible that Trenny was able to walk 10 plus miles through rugged, thick vegetative forest and mountainous terrain to each location without being seen at all, by the way? We could even say that after she turned off the trail where her friends last saw her, she could have found another trail and hiked to the destinations where the evidence was found. But another question would then be brought up. How would she remain undetected despite being on extremely popular trails? Like I said in the beginning.
Well, very easily you turn your phone off or you smash it where there's no signal, etc., etc. It's possible to go off grid, but very highly unusual because I wouldn't.
Hundreds of people walk through these trails daily. Surely one of them would have realized that a girl she remained undetected despite being on extremely popular trails. Like I said in the beginning, hundreds of people walk through these trails daily. Surely one of them would have realized that a girl who had just walked past them was the one that went missing. Furthermore, she would have been torn up and dirty, which would have caused much more attention to be on her by onlookers. Yeah. Another question that remains in the case as well is what did Trenny see in the woods that would cause her to go off trail, and why she would choose to go off trail instead of running to her friends, if it was something dangerous or I don't know, you know? Like, did she see someone that she knew? Skinwalker. Or did something in the woods coax her off trail? Skinwalker. I just think it's a skinwalker, honestly. I'm scared. You won't catch me. You won't catch me in them woods, all right? And luckily for you, there are theories for both, so let's get into those. First theory is that she was being...
For a start, I don't believe in skinwalkers. It's just a myth. I do not believe in skinwalkers. I believe in spirits, but not skinwalkers.
Stalked and was kidnapped off the trail. A man by the...
I believe in Bigfoot, but not skinwalkers.
Name of Kelvin Bowman, what a stupid name, was shot in the foot of Trenny's yard after being caught creeping near her house. And later on, student testimony claimed that his car...
You need to stop doing that, mate. Don't matter what name it is, they went missing. You're out of order on that one. You're lucky I didn't give you a thumbs down again.
Had been seen tailing the bus on the way to the hiking trail. Another possibility is that a classmate on the hike along with her lured her off the trail. As we mentioned earlier, Trenny was walking with Robert Simpson before turning around, and the two of them had been known to hang out outside of school, and when she disappeared, she was wearing his brown jacket. And when he was questioned about her disappearance, he said that after she left, he himself had gone off trail tracking a bear. Okay, I just don't believe anybody at this point. Furthermore, after she disappeared, Trenny's hairbrush would be found in his car. And after other students' testimonies, it was found that it would be extremely unlikely for her to leave her hairbrush behind because she always had it in her pocket. Which, like, you could say that they hung out and stuff and that she would just leave her stuff in his car. I feel like that's just very, you know, coincidental. It's not like that big of a thing, but... you know, still suspicious, all right? Still suspicious. But in addition to all that, there were two recorded instances of Robert saying pretty heinous things to Trenny's sister, quote unquote.
If Kelvin Bowman has Trenny, he will kill her. If he doesn't have her, I think she might have run off with some horny hitchhiker.
I just want to talk about how easy it is to make money in 2025. Call it a hot take, but as long as you've got an internet connection and
like, who the f says that about their good friend that just went missing and can't be found? Who the, like, that's so dumb. From William's interview, we learned this. When Dennis disappeared, he was literally within 50 feet. NPS knew something that everyone else where the evidence was found. But another question would then be brought up. How would she remain undetected despite being on extremely popular trails? Like I said, or she would have that would cause her to someone that she knew. You won't kidnapped. And later on, student testimony claimed that his car had been seen tailing stupid name for both. So let's get into those. First theory is that she
Yeah, I need to stop saying stupid name. He went missing. That's out of order.
Was being stalked and was kidnapped off the trail. A man by the name of Kelvin Bowman, what a stupid name, was shot in the foot of Trenny's yard after being caught creeping near her house. And later on, student testimony claimed that his car had been seen tailing the bus on the way to the hiking trail. Another possibility is that a classmate on the hike along with her lured her off the trail. As we mentioned earlier,
My name's Dinah Ward. Actually, my name is Dinah Ward. That's not a stupid name. And no name is stupid, love. Some mother or father gives that Ben that name. You're very out of order. You need to think before you speak, because you are intelligent, but you want them, what's your love? Saying that about someone's name, why would you do that? Why? Why would you do that?
Trenny was walking with Robert Simpson before turning around, and the two of them had been known to hang out outside of school, and when she disappeared, she was wearing his brown jacket. And when he was questioned about her disappearance, he said that after she left, he himself had gone off trail tracking a bear. Okay, I just don't believe anybody at this point. Furthermore, after she disappeared, Trenny's hairbrush would be found in his car. And after other students' testimonies, it was found that it would be extremely unlikely for her to leave her hairbrush behind because she always had it in her pocket. Which, like, you could say that they hung out and stuff and that she would just leave her stuff in his car. I feel like that's just very, coincidental. It's not like that big of a thing, but still suspicious, all right? Still suspicious. But in addition to all that, there were two recorded instances of Robert saying pretty heinous things to Trenny's sister, quote unquote.
If Kelvin Bowman has Trenny, he will kill her. If he doesn't have her, I think she might have run off with some horny hitchhiker.
Like, who the f says that about their good friend that just went missing and can't be found? That's so f***ed up. There's too many theories in my head. Let's go on to other ones. So the final theory is where Dennis and Trenny's stories potentially match up. Both stories obviously involved something going wrong in the woods that is heavily suspected to be kidnappings. Dennis was hiding in the woods and disappeared. Later, in an area just below where he was last seen, a man spots another man with something over his...
Well, don't forget you get hillbillies, mate. Hillbillies that live in the forest. They could have took them.
Shoulder running along the ridgeline. And Trenny was last seen bending over looking at something.
And if you think about it, hillbillies are off grid. And they really are off grid. So it could be hillbillies. You ladies should subscribe to me. And my non-subscribers, please subscribe. If you're watching my videos, the least you could do is subscribe, because I need as many subscribers as I can possibly get. So please, if you're watching my videos, etc., please subscribe. So you could do for me, like this person on here that needs to care down what she says about people's names, etc.
In the woods, and then strangely went off trail. And while searching for Trenny, the dogs would pick up her scent in areas miles apart and only accessible through trails or dense forests. Both children had also obviously never been found. The closest thing to being found was a footprint in the Double Springs shelter, but other than that, nothing. Both involved the FBI and the NPS, claiming that foul play was not a factor, yet both agencies stuck around to continue a private investigation. Furthermore, 2 divisions of the U.S. Special Forces were involved in the search. And we know that the Green Berets were armed during the search as well, but it is unknown if the Marines had firearms. Finally, both disappearances occurred within a very short period of time within each other, and were in very...
So it was like they was prepared for whatever it was, or whatever it is, that took them. That's why they had firearms. That's the only logical reason. So they know what's going on, but we don't know nothing, because the government won't tell us. So I think the government, and leave a comment down below, that the government are hiding something from us.
Close proximity to each other as well. And in the search log, searchers wrote that they were searching Cades Cove, which, if you recall, is the exact area where Harold Key saw the man in the bushes shortly after seeing the man running on the ridge. So looking at the evidence presented in each case, it looks like the disappearances could have been caused by the same thing. Many people have theorized that both disappearances are because of Bigfoot or wild men.
Hillbillies, Bigfoot, could be anything.
Despite Dwight McCarter stating that it wasn't likely a wild man that took Dennis, all evidence points to someone being in the woods and running off with him. And same for Trenny. There was no way a 16-year-old girl who had just been bussed in knew her way around the woods enough to follow the path that she did. It had to be something or someone that led her or carried her through the woods, which is terrifying to think about. It would also explain why Trenny was lured into the woods, while special forces were called and armed in both cases, and why the FBI and NPS both did private investigations, withholding and changing information released to the public. It's because there is something in the woods at Great Smoky National Park, and whether it is a man or a beast, it has a propensity for stealing children. And while the idea of Bigfoot is crazy, many believe that the Smoky Mountains are home to the creature. Even David Paulides himself is a big believer and plans to appear at numerous Bigfoot conferences and talks. But it is tough to say what happened to both victims, but one thing is for sure, there was some shady shit occurring in the woods and in this investigation. But alas, my heart goes out to the families involved in this, and I hope that one day these kids can be found, because it's absolutely heartbreaking, and the conspiracies around it are also heartbreaking to hear about. But until then, be safe and be vigilant. And that brings us to our next stories. So as we know, David Paulides investigates many cases of missing persons from seemingly all areas of American history. And he takes a particular interest in those that offer no clear answers. Like many, he entertains the idea that perhaps there are answers beyond the scope of what science as we know it can explain. He explains why some people go missing and are never found, and some of the very strange ways that people are recovered, whether before or after they succumb to the elements, or the unknown. Some of these fascinating cases involve people who have gone missing and are found after their location is revealed to a family member in a dream. This concept is bizarre, I know, but how far-fetched is it really? Because I know I've had some dreams that were kind of like premonition-y, and I've scared myself, so who knows? But without further ado, we are going to look into some of these cases that David Paulides has detailed, and we can come to our own conclusions. First up, we have Gustav Dill.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like Ojo time. Feel the
Nestled quietly along the banks of Susquehanna River, Duncannon, Pennsylvania, is a small town where time seems to flow a little slower. The kind of place where the air is thick with the scent of pine from the surrounding forests. And in the early 20th century, Duncannon was little more than just a dot on the map. Though its community was living and breathing apart from the rapidly industrialized world outside, every face here was familiar, and the steady pace of the river and the railroad marked the rhythms of daily life. With under 1,500 people as of the 2020 census, this sleepy little town still feels like it's suspended in time. It's still surrounded by the wilds, with state parks nearby and game lands for hunting to the northwest and south, and the river to the east. Residents even have access to the Appalachian Trail nearby. One can only imagine what it must have been like to live in this region in the early 1900s, before four-lane highways cut their way through the terrain like long, ugly scars. In this very place, on a November day in 1916, Gustav Dill, a man of modest means but strong character, went out on the river for the last time. He and his buddies went on a hunting trip with the goal of crossing the Susquehanna. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But plans would go awry when the boat flipped, and its occupants would be tossed into the river. Gustav would be pulled beneath the water, and unfortunately, Gustav did not know how to swim, and his friends would not be able to save him. Despite the best efforts of rivermen dragging the river for days with grappling hooks in hopes of recovering Gustav, there was unfortunately no luck. And the week or so after efforts had concluded and the hopes of finding Gustav had waned, his wife would have a dream in which every detail of his location was revealed, and even witness his funeral. So she would implore people to help her pick up the search again, but to no avail. It was only when a couple of old rivermen who took pity on her, skeptical of her claims to say the least, agreed to take up the search again 10 days after the boat accident. And within 5 minutes of a couple of old rivermen who took pity on her, skeptical of her claims to say the least, agreed to take up the search again 10 days after the boat accident. And within 5 minutes of casting their grappling hooks into the river for the first time, where Gustav's wife indicated, Gustav's body was recovered. And this story seems like the kind of tale that would make national news, or at the very least, the first time where Gustav's wife indicated Gustav's body was recovered. And this story seems like the kind of tale that would make national news, or at the very least, the front page, right? A woman had a vision of where her husband's body could be found after his boat overturned. Like, what? That seems like a really big deal. But the only reference we could find of this was a small block from the third page of a newspaper, the Atlanta Georgian. And it says this:
A dream of his widow led to the finding of the body of Gustav Dill, a Duncannon who was drowned in the Susquehanna River there when his boat was overturned. Experienced rivermen had dragged the stream missing, so they believed, no current or eddy in which the body might have been lodged. Efforts were discontinued 10 days ago. Several nights ago, in a dream, Mrs. Dill saw every circumstance of the finding of the body, and later the funeral of the drowned man. She was unable at first to prevail upon any person to search for the body. Finally, two old rivermen, incredulous but full of pity.
That should have been the front page, mate. Nah, that should have been front page news. Newspaper, you should be ashamed.
Agreed to take upon the search again. Within 5 minutes after the men had thrown in their grappling irons, the body was hooked and brought to the surface at the place indicated by Mrs. Dill.
No interview, no nothing. Like, this woman, literally a miracle happened, and that's it. That's it. Anyway, I think that's like amazing and very interesting. And this happens like more than you think. Let's get into the next one. Alice May Mathers. Another city would also have the quiet serenity of its streets disturbed. In 1963, when 12-year-old girl by the name of Alice May Mathers went missing. Mission is a city that is carved out of a place amidst the forests and the forest-covered mountains in British Columbia. Also, I can say this now because I live in Texas. That's where I lived. I lived in Abbotsford, but I was living in Mission, and I love it. I literally lived in the woods, and it was awesome, and I miss it, but I love Texas as well. It's great. Anyway, it falls southeast of Vancouver and north of the Fraser River.
You can actually tell that you miss it. Just be careful what you say then on YouTube, love. People don't take too kindly to, saying that the name's silly or whatever, because it ain't. No name is silly, especially when they go missing. Now to go mad when people are called idiots.
And neighbors the Golden Ears Mountain, which I've climbed on many occasions. Alice May Mathers was a 12-year-old girl who lived with her family on the outskirts of Mission, British Columbia, Canada. And on June 9th, 1963, she disappeared under circumstances that would later reveal a chilling crime. Alice had spent the day visiting her married sister, who lived about a mile from the Mathers home. That day, she borrowed an electric mixer from her sister and planned to use it for baking when she returned home. However, Alice never made it back. When she didn't arrive home as expected, her father traced her steps back, but found no sign of her. The Mathers family and friends and neighbors began searching for her immediately, and soon after the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And there would also be an additional 100 volunteers helping to search for Alice. And the primary search area would be the dense woods surrounding the Mathers property, and obviously the route that Alice would have taken to get home. And early in the search, dogs would be brought in to pick up Alice's scent. And the dogs would trace her trail from her sister's house to the nearby Lougheed Highway, where the smell would abruptly end. And this discovery raised the possibility that Alice could have been abducted. And the Mathers family would grow increasingly desperate as the days passed, with no sign of Alice. And 2 weeks after Alice's disappearance on June 23rd, 1963, her mother would have a vivid dream. In this dream, she saw Alice lying in a gully or a pit, lifeless on a rock. The dream was so absolute and unsettling that she shared it with her husband the following day. And unable to shake the image, Mrs. Mathers insisted that they search this place. So the Mathers sought help from a friend who was very familiar with this area. Mrs. Mathers would describe the area from her dream, and together they would travel to a gravel pit about 14 miles from their home, and they would begin searching opposite sides. And it wasn't long before one of them found a small figure lying on a rock, just as Mrs. Mathers had described. The figure was severely beaten and unrecognizable, but the clothing and pair of new shoes was identified as Alice's. And this was no accident, and there was no mystery here. Alice was murdered. And an inquiry into another case that tied in with the Mathers case turned up two suspects, a pair of brothers, 30-year-old Kenneth Lloyd Meeker and 35-year-old James Leonard Meeker. They'd kidnapped her along her walk home, grabbing her from Lougheed Highway. And fibers recovered from under Alice's fingernails matched those in a jacket and trousers recovered from the home of Kenneth. And hair on Alice's body was also similar to that recovered from a blanket at the house. And neither brother spoke, asked if they had anything to say for themselves, because they're pieces of shit.
Why would the brothers do that to the sister? Why? Evil.
But both would be charged with capital murder, though Kenneth was the one who had done all the killing. In a document containing the names of those sentenced to death,
don't matter if one of the brothers only did it, the other one witnessed it and obliged him to do it. So they're just both as bad. They should get the death sentence, both of them. If you can watch your sister die while your brother kills somebody, that is disgusting. Absolutely outrageously disgusting. I hope you die in prison.
In Canada between 1867 and 1976, Kenneth's name appears on page 270. Though the result of his trial was life imprisonment. These deaths are undoubtedly horrifically tragic, but there is an air of mystery around them. What happened to Gustave wasn't a mystery. People saw what happened, and what happened to Alice had been a mystery, but the mystery was solved. The mystery is how both of these people had women in their lives that had dreams that revealed where their bodies were. Gustave's wife and Alice's mother. Like, how does that happen? Is it just a wild coincidence, or is it supernatural? We'll never really know. But subconscious perception could be the answer. Both women may have subconsciously observed.
Or the one with the two brothers, she might have known about it. We don't know, do we? So it's one of them, innit?
Absorbed information from their surroundings or conversations that they consciously processed. The human brain is constantly taking in vast amount of sensory data, much of which we don't actively notice. It's possible that during their waking hours, they observed subtle clues, such as landscape, weather patterns, or even patterns in the search efforts that their conscious minds just overlooked. And in their dreams, these pieces of information could have been synthesized into a coherent message or image, which then manifested into a dream, which guided them to the bodies. And many people boast about the power of the subconscious mind and its ability to translate input from all senses and multitask when the conscious mind is focusing on one thing at a time. And one other interesting potential answer is a scientific concept that, well, kind of crazy, has become an accepted fact. Quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is a newer idea, definitely to me. I've not heard of it much, just looking into it, like, for this case, with examples being yin and yang, or protons and electrons. Essentially, when two things are subject to quantum entanglement, when you do something to one, it affects the other. As said before, this happens with protons and electrons, and the idea of yin and yang is also similar to this. In fact, when the wave functions of entangled photons was visualized, it appears very reminiscent of yin and yang. So can people be linked in such a way? Who knows? I'm not a scientist, nor do I pretend to be. Okay, I got A's in science in high school and whatnot, but that does not make me a quantum entanglement professor of sorts. But it does feel almost like when they say two twins are physically linked, and when one is hurt, the other feels it. Yeah. You know? It makes me think a lot, you know? I think a lot, go outside of myself and everything. It's very interesting, but I think it's really awesome that these women were able to find their loved ones and kind of have that closure that the other cases didn't. Which brings us to our next case, the Oz effect.
Oh, there's more, guys. Wow.
So on March 14th, 2014, a man by the name of Dr. James McGrogan would disappear outside Vail, Colorado on a hiking trip. He and 3 other of his friends went on this hike, and after some strange things happened, he disappeared. Dr. James McGrogan was a man in excellent shape. He was a 39-year-old physician and someone very familiar with the outdoors and hiking. With his 3 friends, as I said, he decided to go on a hiking trip and do some skiing. They gathered some supplies at a store nearby, and they would also rent equipment at a place called Confluence Kayaks, where they took gear and began their long hike into the Holy Cross Wilderness. The route started from the town of Vail to the Iceman Hut, the path being about 6 to 8 miles long. However, the elevation of this hut was around 11,000 feet due to it being up a mountain, which is a lot. Okay, I come from the mountainous Rocky Mountains up in BC, alright, I know elevation, alright? That's really high. And it's a popular area for hikers nearby since it's very scenic and nature-oriented. And in the right weather, it's perfect for skiing, which was the point of the group's hike. And they carried supplies such as a split snowboard, a blanket, a GPS, a cell phone with an extra battery, a shovel, and medical supplies, with some additional gear as well, just to ensure that everything went smoothly on the hike and that they were prepared for anything that might happen. So during the hike at around 10 a.m., the group decided to take a rest at one of the stops due to their lack of experience compared to McGrogan. McGrogan would state that he still had energy and told the group he would meet them at the next rest stop, to which the group agreed, because he was experienced and he knew what he was doing, so there was no worries of him really needing help. So after the group rested, they got all their gear packed up and they began to make their way to the next rest stop to meet him. But as soon as they got there, they would realize that McGrogan was not there. Confused, they thought that he may have gone further, just being impatient waiting for the group, so they continued yet again. And after hours passed and around 5:30 p.m., after searching all day, they realized something was very wrong. So
couldn't an avalanche have happened and it could have got covered in snow and they wouldn't have found him anywhere. It could have been an avalanche, that's why maybe went missing, right? Avalanche, yeah, man. That poor soul.
One member of the group decided to hike all the way back down to notify the Eagle County Sheriff's Office, which then, in turn, led to a 5-day search trying to find McGrogan. And what confused the searching party and his friends.
It's not about more space, it's about the right space. It might just be time for you to invest in a quality
Way back down to notify the Eagle County Sheriff's Office, which then, in turn, led to a 5-day search trying to find McGrogan. And what confused the searching party and his friends was that McGrogan was extremely experienced. How could he have just disappeared out of nowhere? Sure, there was snow on the ground, but it was packed so firmly that it was impossible to lose sight of where you needed to go, especially for a skilled hiker and skier. And no phone calls were exchanged, according to David Politis. But according to a Facebook post that we found, it says, McGrogan's cell phone pinged once the day he went missing, but after that, it went dead. But these are conflicting reports, so I will leave it to the expert David Politis. So a search team and 3 helicopters were sent over the 1,800 square mile area to try to find James McGrogan. But still, there was no evidence as to where he had gone. Strangely enough, footprints should have led the search to find him. Only light flurries were falling from the sky, and there was absolutely no way the tracks could have disappeared entirely. But after 5 days of searching, he was nowhere to be found. So, unfortunately, they would call off the search. But during the search, there were reports of eerie silences in the area, tied to the phenomenon that they called the Oz effect, which involves a complete silence in an area, almost unnatural. No signs of wildlife, no signs of moving brush or trees, just complete silence, which is horrifying. And this feeling can also bring on a sense of being watched or a detachment from reality. And researchers claimed that the silence was extremely eerie. The supernatural silence gives the body the feeling that something is very wrong. But after 20 days after his disappearance, his body would be found 4.5 miles away through 2 gullies over a 12,000-foot mountain in an area where they completely didn't expect to find him. And he would be found by 3 hikers at 9,950 feet in elevation in Boot Falls, where search and rescue would later recover his body. It was on an ice sheet, so the surrounding area would be completely frozen compared to its flowing water in the image here.
We're at Booth Creek Falls, 9,950 feet in elevation. That's Booth Creek behind me, and this is the location where in April, 20 days after his disappearance, Dr. McGrogan was found on an ice sheet. And that's what it would have been. This would have been solid ice back in April. He was found wearing black leggings, a shirt, an undershirt, gray socks, no coat, no gloves, and no boots.
And the jacket, along with the GPS, was found unused and packed away in his backpack for some odd reason. However, again, the phone was not used. And conflicting reports state that he would have had service around this location as well. But we can really never know. But according to David Paulides, there were 2 bars of reception from the location where he died.
The interesting part behind the phone is that the phone had a backup battery, and when the coroner took the phone, he turned it on and it worked. Now, where we're at right now, I have 2 bars in active service on my phone. And if you look at the mountain over here to my right, you'll notice that it's huge. It only makes sense that the further you went up into that mountain, you would still have phone service like I do now.
And they also found his snowboard where it was later returned. He was also wearing a helmet, and underneath the helmet, they had noticed he had severe head injuries and trauma to the left side of his chest, and a broken femur. And what makes this strange is the complete disappearance of his boots. And we have seen this before in many 411 disappearance cases, and especially in the Dyatlov Pass case, where for some reason shoes and boots were removed during these times, which I believe is due to hypothermia, because it is very, very common for people experiencing hypothermia to get very, very hot and take off their clothes. So that could be a factor. And it would kind of make sense because his coat wasn't found on him either. So he had been almost like shedding layers. So that could be a possibility. So not only did he have a GPS and a phone, and the path wasn't too confusing to get off of, especially for an experienced skier and hiker, how did James McGrogan get lost and die in such a tragic way? It's essentially completely unexplainable. David Paulides went back to Confluence Kayaks, the place where all the stuff was rented, and would ask Brian some questions. He was the one that was there when James rented the equipment and the specific supplies. A split board, skins for it, a probe, a beacon, a shovel, and a helmet. Only the probe and the helmet were never returned. And he never questioned why the helmet wasn't returned, due to the understanding that anyone that dies with equipment that they wear and is lost in the wilderness for 30 days made sense. However, he was kind of unbothered by the probes. And when asking Brian what would ever cause someone to take that specific route that James McGrogan took, he says it's basically unexplainable. That route was not normal, and it was an extremely difficult route, even for training, let alone fun. And the exact journey isn't factual, but they allege that it went something like this. He would have had to climb up 1,296 feet to then 1,000 feet down towards the creek, then up another 1,100 feet again to get to the peak of Bald Mountain, which is about 12,000 feet. That's a lot. Then he descended to a lower summit, and then another 1,130 feet down again. The end of his journey, where his body was found, was another far drop, leading to his resting place. And what doesn't make sense is through this entire journey, it's estimated he never used the skis for going down the mountain.
We promise a tenfold refund if it doesn't work. Traditional dentures can lead to...
Why so many people go missing? 6 months disturbing case for Will. She was never the same.
Strange things are...
Well, people vanished under it. Alright guys, I'm just gonna hand camping. There we go guys. There we go.
Me and one of my good friends, I'll call him Jesse, would go on camping trips once or twice a year. To specify, we didn't go far out or anything. We basically went down a trail, maybe 2 hours out, then set up our tents and everything. As the sun was starting to set, we prepared to get the campfire going again. Jesse said he'd go for a short walk and collect some dry sticks, but as the sun faded out, Jesse still wasn't back. I waited another 30 minutes. The sun was now fully set, and it was getting really dark. By the 2-hour mark, I was really losing it. I didn't know what to do. I stood up and paced around the campsite for a minute before grabbing the lamp and going out to try and find him. My hand was trembling, holding up the lamp, but the light only reached a few feet ahead. It didn't take long before I heard steady footsteps running toward me.
This is not
your fault.
Today.
This is the most suspicious missing hiker case on the internet.
Deaf hiker falls 700 feet down mountain, but when rescuers finally find her, she isn't alone. When 21-year-old Amelia Milling set out on the Crow Pass Trail in Chugach State Park, she had no idea she was about to face one of the most challenging experiences of her life. Located 30 miles outside of Anchorage, Alaska, the park's trails are known for their difficulty. One of her hiking poles broke, causing her to lose her balance and fall 300 feet down a snow-covered mountain. Miraculously, she survived. As she lay in pain, an animal appeared, which Amelia initially thought was a white wolf. However, it turned out to be a trail dog named Nanook. Nanook stayed with Amelia through the night as they set up camp. The next day, they began their trek back to safety. It turned out Nanook had previously saved a 6-year-old girl who fell into a river. Nanook proved he was a true hero, and we think he is awesome. Like this video, if you agree.
They say the worst thing you can encounter in the woods is other people. This guy was hiking in the Appalachian Mountains when he came across an odd pile of trash.
Yeah, I don't like him. There we go.
One particular night while night hiking, I put in my earbud, one so I could still kind of hear the noises of the night in my other ear. Not long after I entered the woods, I noticed that a light appeared behind me. I kept kind of walking on, but I noticed that the light was kind of following me a little bit. It was a little creepy to me to meet up with people on the trail at night, so I thought it best to just try to pick up my pace. And after several more minutes passed, I still see that this person is behind me and keeping up with me at my faster pace. So I start panicking and going as fast as I possibly can. I am basically running down the trail. So I just did the only thing that I had the energy for, and that was ditch off the side of the trail into the brush, and I just hoped that if I cut off my headlamp that maybe they would pass and not see me. And I turned to look at the light that I know is quickly approaching, and in the darkness I realized that the light that's coming after me is the moon. One particular night while night hiking, I put in
Missing people who were never found. Missing people who were never.
This is why you never camp in the woods at night, because when this guy started building.
This is the scariest moment in an Outdoor Boys video. See, Luke decided to go camping with his 5-year-old son, but what happened next even caught him by surprise. Because while he was stoking the fire and preparing to go to sleep, he heard a strange noise terrifyingly close to the tent.
This song is for any.
My son. Everyone cries when they.
She went camping with her boyfriend. Her car was found disabled 12 miles away, and no one has seen her since. Today's missing person of the day is Danielle Lopez. On April 12, 2024, 37-year-old Danielle was last seen on store cameras at a Wawa in Vincenttown, New Jersey. Later that day, she and her boyfriend drove into the Brendan T. Burns State Forest to camp. According to investigators and family, the two argued and Danielle left the campsite in her blue 2008 Hyundai Accent. Her car wasn't found until May 1st, abandoned and disabled on a remote sand road called Lost Lane, 12 miles from the campground and far from her last confirmed location. Her boyfriend was interviewed and is currently in state prison on unrelated charges, but police have not named him a suspect and the investigation remains open. Leading theories include that she became lost or injured in the Pine Barrens, that she encountered someone after leaving the campsite, or that someone who saw her that night has not come forward. Danielle's mother has now offered a $25,000 reward for any information. If you have any tips, the contact information is listed in the description. I'm Kate, and if you like mysteries that stay with you long after the video ends, hit subscribe. Verified links are always in the description. Thanks for listening.
Have you ever heard of a city that isn't on any map? Deep in the province of Samar in the Philippines lies the legend of Birengen City. They say it's a shimmering metropolis, filled with futuristic skyscrapers and sleek black cars, but completely invisible to the human eye. It's believed to be the home of supernatural beings called Encantos. Local stories are filled with chilling accounts of mysterious clients from Birengen ordering supplies and high-tech equipment. They pay with what seems like pure gold, which later turns into worthless black stones or sand. But here is the truly terrifying part. People who allegedly find their way into Birengen often never return. Missing person cases in the region are sometimes whispered to be the work of the Encantos, taking humans as partners or servants. So if you ever find yourself in a city that seems too perfect, be careful. You might be in Birengen, and finding the way out could be impossible.
4 friends went camping under the same stars in July 2017, deep near Yosemite.
Did you know 9
A man.
People are going missing.
You can't go to national parks.
People are going missing in national parks and forests all over North America under baffling conditions. In some cases, people will be looking right at someone, they'll turn around, and when they turn back, that person's gone. Or people will go missing and then turn up again in locations that are impossible to get to. One man, a former police detective named David Politis, discovered that there were thousands of these cases and no one was looking into it. So he began looking into it and started putting all of his findings